Hello, everyone. My name is Naomi Thompson, and I am the Policy and Advocacy Manager of IB Black Girl. Thank you for joining us today to learn more about Nebraska's legislature. Now, let's get started. Who is IB Black Girl? IB Black Girl is a reproductive justice organization that leads with boldness, innovation, and inspiration, actively creating a radical change-making culture that centers Black women, femmes, and girls. Inspired by the work of Bell Hooks, Alice Walker, Audre Lorde, and other Black feminists and womanists, our organization provides transformational change at the intersections of gender and race. The term IB, framed by author Bell Hooks and B-Boy Buzz, inspired IB Black Girl's founder, Ashley Spivey, to fill spaces with what it means to exist as a Black woman, femme, or girl, where we are free to define and own that narrative. IB Black Girl works with various partners across Nebraska to address the inequities, trauma, and violence within the maternal health sector. Creating transformational systems change will require a comprehensive approach that addresses Black maternal health across the life course. Our goal is to expand access and resources to quality and culturally relevant maternal health services through policy, research, and organizing, while amplifying the voices and experiences of Black women and birthing people. Our mission, we serve as a collective for Black women, femmes, and girls to actualize their full potential to authentically be through autonomy, abundance, and liberation. Our vision, we know that we are the energy and essence and deserve a world where Black women, femmes, and girls live in wholeness. Our values are what center our work. We are Black-centric. We're Black all the time, period. Therefore, we will always work on behalf of, for, and in thoughtful collaboration with Black women, femmes, and girls, recognizing the gradients in our experiences and stories. We are bold. We operate from radical truth, authenticity, and maintain a deep sense of value and worth. And we are audacious. We are thought leaders who amplify the power and choice that we hold as Black women, femmes, and girls. We influence spaces that were thought to be untouchable, build spaces that are for us, by us, lead conversation, shape narratives, and serve where, when, and how we decide. As an organization, we focus on 3 specific areas, first being birth justice, economic catalyst, and then policy and advocacy. Pertaining to birth justice, we use a collective action framework to catalyze a movement, disrupting the systems that perpetuate incidents of maternal morbidity, mortality, and traumatic care experiences using strategies that center the voices, experiences, and leadership of Black women and Black birthing people. When approaching our economic catalyst work, we are committed to providing intentional spaces for Black women and femme founders to actualize their entrepreneurial vision and gain liberation, in addition to providing information and support, focusing on those looking to start, grow, and sustain their businesses. And last but not least, policy and advocacy. Uplifting our voices in decision-making spaces is a way to combat the systemic racism that exacerbates health and economic disparities within our community. Pushing a policy agenda within Nebraska is imperative to improve our lives, protect our autonomy, and reach our full potential. We ensure to promote legislative bills that directly impact our livelihood and provide support to those who want to participate in the political process. Our policy and advocacy approach. We believe policy is a driver for change within our approach to reproductive justice, but we also acknowledge that policy has historically been weaponized against Black communities. And as a result, we are committed to building Black political power to address the harm and chart a new experience of legislation that centers Black women, femmes, and girls. The backbone of our work is community power building. Community power building is central to our advocacy approach and is vital to the engagement and empowerment of Black women, femmes, and girls within the political process. Power building is defined as building and sustaining an organized base of people most impacted by structural inequities and collectively engaging in the processes of changing policies and institutions. There are several models to build power in our community. We approach power building through disseminating information to our community, hosting community events and trainings, and directly providing resources to Black women and birthing folks. Now, Nebraska's legislative landscape. So, Nebraska has a legislature unique to any legislature in the country. The structure of the legislature is referred to as unicameral, meaning it only consists of one house, as compared to bicameral, which is the setup of the rest of the United States legislatures that contains a Senate and a House or Assembly. Due to the legislature being unicameral, it is also the smallest legislative branch in the country with only 49 senators. Another unique aspect of the legislature is that it's nonpartisan, meaning the legislature is not supposed to be controlled by one political party, and party affiliation does not show up on the election ballots. It is important to note 75% of Nebraska's Black population lives in either Douglas or Lancaster County. 14 legislative districts reside in Douglas and 9 are in Lancaster, meaning 23 of the 49 legislative districts are located in these two counties alone. Now, let's get into the legislative process. I want to give a brief overview of what the lawmaking process looks like, and then I'll go into detail in the next few slides. A few steps are necessary for a bill to become a law in Nebraska. The lawmaking process officially begins when a senator introduces a bill in January. Once the bill is introduced, it is assigned to one of various committees in the legislature. Every bill introduced has its own hearing in front of the committee it is assigned to, where constituents like us have the opportunity to testify, share our thoughts on the bill, expressing our concerns or our supporting points. Once that's done, if the bill is voted out of committee by the committee members, it continues to 3 rounds of debate. If the bill makes it through all 3 rounds, it has to be signed by the governor to take effect. Here is a beautiful graphic that I feel like is a great synopsis of the process. You can see introduction, committee hearing, voted out of committee, rounds of debate, and then governor's signature. You can find more in-depth information about this on the Nebraska Legislature website on this link right here. Well, let's start with bill introduction. So, bills are introduced during the first 10 days of the legislative session, which begins in January of each year. Essentially, a senator will bring their idea for a new law to a bill drafter, and together they transform it into the required format of an official bill. Further, they work with the clerk of the legislature and the legislative fiscal office to get it properly filed and prepared an estimated budget required for the bill if it were to take effect. There's no cap on the amount of bills a senator can bring. Now, this will be helpful during session. If you're wanting to find bills that have been proposed, you go to the legislative website homepage, and as seen on the right side of the slide, third from the bottom, there's a link that says introduce legislation. Just click that button and you'll find what you're looking for. As I mentioned before, once a bill is introduced, it gets assigned to a committee. As you can see on the right, there are a variety of committees, 14 to be exact. The bills are assigned to the committee who would have quote unquote jurisdiction over the topic. For example, last year's LB 929, which was expanding postpartum coverage under Medicaid, was referred to the Health and Human Services Committee because the Department of Health and Human Services manages Medicaid. Almost every bill gets a hearing in front of the committee. This is where we come into play. We get to express our opinions to the committee members, which is supposed to help educate them on their stance on the bill, as it's their job to represent their constituents, aka us. Once the hearing is over, the committee gets to decide what to do with that bill. They can pass it on to be debated, meaning it will move forward in the legislative process, or they could also indefinitely postpone the bill. Essentially, the bill wouldn't move forward in the legislative process. If a bill is voted to advance by the committee it was assigned to, it moves on to the rounds of debate. There are 3 rounds of debate, starting with general file. This is the first time the entire body has the chance to debate and vote on the bill. When it gets to this point, senators and committees have the opportunity to start thinking about amendments, aka changing the original language of the bill to negotiate or align the bill more so with their interests. It takes a majority vote of the legislature, so 25 votes, to advance the bill to the next round of debate. The second round is called select file. This round offers another opportunity for amendments, negotiation, and reflection. There are 2 options for the bill in select file. 1, indefinitely postponing the bill, stopping it from advancing, or 2, advancing the bill to the final round of debate. If the bill moves through that round and it goes to the final round of debate, the round is called final reading. Bills can't be amended at this point, but they can be sent back to select file in order to do so. Though there are different requirements for bills with an emergency clause or a constitutional amendment, regular bills need simply a majority, so 25 votes, to move on and be signed by the governor. Now, on to the required governor signature. As I said, if the bill gets past final reading, the governor has 5 days to decide whether they want to sign or veto that bill. So, if the governor decides to sign it or takes no action on it, the bill will become a state law. If they decide to veto the bill and the legislature disagrees with that decision, the body needs 30 votes to override that veto to make the bill into a law. Listen, I know that was a lot of information, but I will say it's definitely easier to understand when you watch it happen during legislative session. There are a few ways you can keep up with the session, one being a live stream, which you can find on the Nebraska Legislature homepage, which is the bottom left on this slide. Another one is the unicameral update, which is like a news site. You see that in the center. And then the legislative journal you can find on the legislative homepage as well, bottom right on this slide. It takes in-depth notes of what happened during the session on a specific date. All right, now let's talk about the senators and how they get elected. Each senator serves a 4-year term, and election years alternate for even and odd districts. For example, this past election, 2022, all even-number districts representatives were up for election. As with every public official position, there are certain criteria you must meet to even consider running for the state legislature. You have to be 21 years of age, registered to vote, and reside in the legislative district you are hoping to represent for at least 1 year before the election, which all of these are fair when, we're considering who we would want to represent us. So let's get into election logistics. Like I said, every 4 years, the even number districts were in 2022. So the next election will be the odd number districts. So the information on this slide, although these are dates for the election that has already happened this year, is a great example of how each election works. There are 2 elections to reach the final verdict of who your representative-elect will be. First is the primary election. This usually happens in May of election year, And as I mentioned before, the election is nonpartisan, also referred to as the top two primary system. The top two candidates with the most votes, not labeled Republican, Democrat, or any other party, would be running in the general election. The general election takes place in November of election years. This is when you choose between the two candidates that won the primary, and whoever gets the most votes will be the representative of your district in the legislative body. All right, so using our right to vote in Nebraska. Like I mentioned before, this is voting information from the past election, but the process will be fairly similar in the upcoming races. To register to vote as a Nebraska resident, you can go to the Nebraska online registration portal. You can see the link and what it looks like on the right side of the screen over here on the slide. You can also register in person at your county election office, the DMV, the Department of Health and Human Services, or the Department of Education when in connection with those public programs. When it comes to the day of voting, you can find information via the online polling place search by entering your address in the search bar. If you wish, you can apply for what's called early voting, where you can vote early in person up to 30 days prior to the primary or general election. All county offices do accept early voting applications up to 120 days prior to a primary or general election. You can also request an absentee ballot, which is another way of early voting. These ballots are not sent out until around 35 days before the primary or general election. You can return this ballot by mail, return it to the election office, or put it into a designated Nebraska drop box that will be located within your county. Each county has at least one. Also, be sure to inquire with your employer on your place of work's policy when it comes to taking time off to vote. There should be some regulation that allows employees to do so. Well, we're wrapping up here, but before we do, I do have a call to action for all of us, and make sure to spread the word. Contact your senators. With the new body being elected for this new session, it is important to let every senator know the issues that are important to the community they are elected to represent. Register to vote and use your rights. As I mentioned, this year's election has already passed, but let's be prepared for the next one. Thank you all for tuning in. I really hope this was helpful. I would love to answer any questions that you have. You can email me at Naomi, that's NYOMI, at ibblackgirl.org. I love having these conversations and will be willing to have a conversation with you. So do it. Also, I super recommend connecting with IB Black Girl via social media and email if you have any other general questions. So our email is hello@ibblackgirl.org. We got our website, ibblackgirl.com, and then our Instagram at ibblackgirl. Thanks again, and please take care of yourselves, support each other, and make room for joy despite what is going on in the world.